Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October monthly ANC 1B meeting. We'll begin with our information session, and I will pass this part of the meeting to Commissioner Hudson to facilitate and moderate.
Thanks, Chairman Turner. My name is Rob Hudson, for those who haven't met me yet. Hi, Alex and Jose. It's good to finally meet you, I guess, online. I appreciate you attending. DCHA has come to talk about two of the properties right now that they manage within the ANC, and we hope to talk about more of them in the coming months. But I'm going to turn it over to them to talk about Kelly Miller and LeDroit Park.
Okay.
Or LeDroit Apartments, not Park. Yeah.
We can talk about the park too, but that's okay. Jose, are you driving?
Yep.
Okay, great. So the information on your screen is excerpted from a resident meeting we did with the residents of LeDroit and Kelly Miller 2 times actually over the last couple of months. And if you want to just advance the screen, Jose. So what we started with the resident presentation, first of all, the resident presentation was about something called RAD, which is the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program. It's a HUD program that allows public housing authorities to convert their public housing property to what's called a project-based Section 8 funding platform. And what that allows us to do is it also allows us to take the property out of the HUD declaration of trust that's placed on the property, which is like a deed restriction for the public housing, and it allows us to then go out and get private financing to help fund improvements to the property. And then the property operates like Section 8. We get a HAP contract and we operate the property with Section 8 subsidy as opposed to public housing subsidy. So we took the residents through a presentation talking about why we would do this and what are the facts about the RAD program. And then we talked a little bit about the LeDroit Apartments and the Kelly Miller Townhomes. Those are the properties that we're looking to convert, and what our plans are for the future for the Kelly Miller walk-ups as well. We talked about the relocation process and what that would look like for the need for us to do intensive renovation work within those properties and how we're going to relocate residents equitably to other units within the property, our resident engagement process going forward, and then talking about next steps. Jose, if you want to. So the first thing we talked about with the residents was that the federal government through HUD does not currently provide enough funding to make improvements that residents of public housing need and deserve. And this has been true for 20 or 30 years. I mean, HUD's been slowly reducing the operating subsidy and capital fund for public housing since the 1990s. And it's not likely to change. And HUD's been very clear with us on that. So HUD has provided another option. This RAD option was offered first during the Obama administration in 2012. And RAD is an option to obtain more sustainable funding choices for public housing authorities to improve public housing properties by converting them to a Section 8 contract as opposed to a Section 9, which is public housing. And we reiterated with the residents that LeDroit and Kelly Miller are a piece of a portfolio in the DCHA public housing portfolio that in total we think needs about $2.5 billion in investment in capital. So they are a piece of that, and that's why we're looking to do this conversion, is because we think we can successfully convert the property in the case of LeDroit Senior and Kelly Miller Townhomes and operate it on a more sustainable platform. So RAD allows public housing authority to fund a major building improvement and stabilize federal funding for the future without resident displacement, with no loss of housing benefits, and with no change in the calculated rent. So we're not raising the rent. We're not looking to change the operating rights or responsibilities of the tenants. Nothing changes in terms of their lease. They don't have to leave. Everybody can stay. But what it does is it allows us to get LIHTC funding and debt funding to be able to raise the money to do the improvements that we need to do. As I said before, RAD stands for the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program. HUD crafted this program in 2012 as a response to fill the growing gap between decreasing federal funding and increasing capital needs. And because federal funding is often not enough to provide for the high upkeep costs of existing properties, RAD allows public housing authorities to move away from the federal annual contributions contract, which is the contract we get to operate a property under public housing, to a Section 8 housing choice voucher assistance. And this makes it possible for us to obtain funding from private and alternative sources to improve the capital needs of buildings. So RAD allows the Public Housing Authority to work with partners who want to invest in building improvements. And this gives DCHA the opportunity to take not just our own funds, but also to leverage those funds with borrowed money, getting bond issuance through a 4% low-income housing tax credit, working with philanthropic or charitable partners to raise funds, or even taking on development partners or investors to help defray the cost of the renovations. So in the case of the photo on the screen here is actually Judiciary House, but I do have a photo of the LeDroit Senior Building that will come on the next slide. The scope of work in the LeDroit Senior Building will include all of the things that are listed here. It'll include apartment renovations to provide residents with brand new kitchens, bathrooms, and finishes, update all the building systems, the electrical, plumbing, fire, mechanical systems, everything in the building, doing energy efficiency measures, replacing the windows, and doing insulation upgrades in the building so that the building will operate more energy efficiently. New roofs, exterior improvements in roofs, enhanced community spaces, and improved building security measures. And we are also looking for resident feedback through this process. We're currently working, with about $14 million in district funds to do most of the improvements at LeDroit, but we will have some money that we can raise through the RAD program, and we're looking for additional enhancements such as community facilities or other upgrades to the operation of the building that would make the building, a more amenity-rich location for the seniors who live there. Next slide. So here's an image of the LeDroit Senior Building. The nice thing about RAD is really good for rehab, and it can fund a deep rehab. In other words, like a gut rehab of a building. So we can rehab the building, put it back into a good state of repair as though it's new. And we keep the same number of apartments with the same configuration, same unit count. We can do phased construction to minimize moves. So instead of moving everybody out and then moving them back when the renovation's done, we can do it in small pieces. And people can stay within the building by utilizing the vacant units that are already there. And we move them around, and as we finish their unit, they go out to a make-ready unit, and then they come back. So they never leave the building. They just go down the hall or up a floor, and then they come back to their brand new renovated apartment. And as I said before, this allows us a more stable funding source capable of servicing future maintenance needs of the property. Through the RAD program, we have to demonstrate that we can operate the building and put away replacement reserves for any future capital needs. And so we're operating on a different model that forces us, it's a program that really forces us to operate the building like any private landlord would, where you have to put away replacement reserves and maintain a positive net operating income in order to operate successfully. This is a map that shows the LeDroit and Kelly Miller projects. You can see W Street on the north, 4th Street Northwest cuts right through our site. All the buildings that are in blue represent the buildings we're looking to convert through RAD. And the buildings in pink or magenta are the ones that we're eventually looking to do a Section 18 demo dispo and redevelop. So you can see a substantial area of the middle of the block between 2nd and 4th would be a redevelopment. Those are the older walk-up Kelly Miller buildings. There's a building on V Street on the south side next to the LeDroit Park, and then there are the buildings on the west side of 4th Street where we are looking to redevelop those properties as mixed income housing in the future. And we haven't really engaged with the residents about that, and there is no plan at this point. It's just kind of in the conceptual stage, so that's really all we can say about that. But we just wanted to give you an idea of what our general concept is. And this is all consistent with the transformation plan that we put out last year. Jose? So, just a quick overview. The LeDroit Senior Building was built in 1965. It has 106 units. They're all 1 bedroom. There are a total of 6 vacant units, and we have actually had more than that since then. We've gotten it up to, I think, 12 through attrition, through people moving out. So we now have enough units to do phase 1 of the rehab. Phase 1 was a 12-unit rehab, so we've actually moved everybody out, and we've got the units all aligned and stacked so that we can start phase 1. Next slide, please. This is a slide that just shows some of the general repair that we've been doing at the Kelly Miller. We already replaced the roofs on the Kelly Miller townhome buildings, and we painted the units. We did stop painting because of COVID. We didn't want to put the painters in direct contact with residents and have a potential problem. So We got 32 of the 40 townhouse units at Kelly Miller fully painted on the inside. The remaining 8 will have to wait until we have further guidance from the mayor as to when we can really go back in and have direct, interaction between contractors and residents. We've also made some other upgrades you can see on the top right. We've got plans for site work and parking improvements, replacing the roofs and painting the units at Kelly Miller. Of course, we're finished with that. Doing phased unit modernization at the LeDroit Senior Building, about $12.7 million there, and an elevator modernization at that building also, which is about $700,000. We've also put in LED lights and water-saving fixtures in the building and replaced the chiller back in 2019 to the tune of almost $300,000. Next slide. This is a photo. We were just up there. Jose and I were there last Friday to look at the in-progress work at the LeDroit Senior Plaza, which is just below W Street on 4th. This is currently all fenced off, but if you look through the fence, you'll see that we've completely restored the plaza. We put a new awning on the front entrance. We put in brand new grills, brand new street furniture in the plaza. We repaved everything, and we've refreshed all of the planting beds with new plant material and new mulch. So the whole thing is pretty much like new. And that's just an example of, one modest improvement we've made, and that's what we're intending to bring through the entire complex, is this level of enhancement. Next slide. Our first phase of rehab at LeDroit, which is starting in the next month, is what we call the 04 and 05 stacks of units. Those are the units that sit immediately outside of the wall or inside the wall against 4th Street and W. So if you look at the building, from 4th and W corner, those units that face the corner right at 4th and W, those are the first tier that are going to get rehabbed. And then, as I said, the Kelly Miller and LeDroit walk-ups is a longer-term project. It's going to take several years to get our plan in place and go through zoning for the redevelopment. So we're really just kind of starting at that. And we haven't had a lot of engagement with the residents yet. I will say that Kelly Miller has also recently had some upgrades. We're working on putting in new security camera infrastructure on that site and doing some additional lighting, which should improve some of the issues that we have there today with security. And we are continuing to monitor that. Next slide. This is an example of the work we've done at the Kelly Miller walk-ups. There's not as much work, admittedly. We did stabilize the smokestack. The smokestack needed some masonry stabilization back in 2017. We did some modest unit renovations and some soil remediation of some existing contamination. And that's about it that we've done in the last 4 years. One of the things we talked about with the residents are, what are your rights as a resident under RAD? Your rights include the following. You're guaranteed the right to return with no rescreening, which means that we're not going to rescreen you and have you sign a brand new lease. The lease you sign as a RAD tenant is the same as your public housing lease. There's no screening. There's no background checks or anything like that to go with it. We don't do our income recertification. Your income recertification under public housing stays in effect for RAD, and you go back onto your normal income certification process. So you don't have to pass through the gate to get back in. You have an automatic guaranteed right to return. We provide full relocation assistance, and even though the residents are just staying in the building, they still need movers and they need people to help them move their stuff. We provide all of that. We pay for all the moves. We have movers on contract that we use who move all the stuff. We can provide packing assistance if necessary, and we pay for any extraneous utility charges like cable or phone, dish services, or anything like that. If you have to move it, sometimes there's a reconnection fee from the utility company. We take care of it. After the RAD conversion, the resident council will still be in place. It'll be funded in the same way. And the resident rents will still be based on 30% of adjusted income. We walk them, I won't read this whole thing, but we walk the residents through the relocation process steps from 1 through 6 to talk about our mobility team and how they engage one-on-one with residents. Basically, the high level here is that when we initiate one of these phases, we're going to meet one-on-one with each resident, either face-to-face if we can, or during COVID, if necessary, we'll meet in a virtual way to gauge each resident's needs, and then we'll design the services for the relocation to meet the needs of each family. Next slide. And then we took the residents through the rest of our engagement process. The first bracket at the top talks about what we've already done, which is we've provided each resident at the LeDroit Senior and Kelly Miller Townhomes with what's called a resident information notice. And what that does is it conveys general written information on the potential project plans and the basic resident rights under RAD. And then we conduct 2 resident meetings. And we've actually, in this case, we did 4, because we did 2 meetings per day on 2 separate days during the months of August and September. So we've actually at this point done 4 meetings with the residents. We had them at different times to accommodate different people's schedules. If we are fortunate enough to get board approval to advance this application to HUD, the next step would be what's called a commitment to a housing assistance payment, or what's called a CHAP. When we get that CHAP, then we're going to hold additional meetings. There's actually 2 meetings that happen after that. One would be to meet with residents to announce that the CHAP has been awarded, and the second meeting would be to present our financing plan for how we're going to pay for the upgrades of the building and how we're going to operate the building sustainably. And we committed that in all points in this process, DCHA will ensure effective communication with all persons who have disabilities or language barriers, and complying with the DC language access laws. And then we gave them some contact information for our property manager at LeDroit Kelly Miller, which is Shromi Hightower, and gave them direct information for how to reach out to their, or how to get more information about our transformation plan or about RAD through our transformation plan hotline. I think that's our last slide. I talked a little bit fast, and I apologize if anybody needs me to go back and recap anything. That's it.
And I just wanted to share, I share with Amanda, we'll send over the presentation so that it can be posted or shared to whomever wants to get a hard copy of it or a soft copy of it.
Happy to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I really appreciate that. I was on one of the meetings where you went through this in detail with the residents, and they had lots of good questions.
They did.
And I know that they are excited about the improvements that are happening and being able to stay in place too. And I think that's important. I mean, moving someone down the hall is a lot easier than moving them, across town, because they're most likely to not want to come back just because of the no one likes to move. I mean, no one likes the process of moving people because that's right. It's just hideous a lot of times. I do. There's been a couple of questions in thing about TOPA, and I'm fairly sure that TOPA doesn't apply in this case because the city is not selling these units to anybody.
That's correct.
But I don't know if that is accurate. So if you can, expand upon that a little bit, since the building is not actually changing hands, these units aren't being sold or converted to anything. That's in my head, the logic that TOPA isn't actually in play here, but if you could expand on that, that'd be helpful.
Sure. Thank you for prompting me. I think that the important thing to know about the LeDroit and Kelly Miller RAD conversion is that, unlike some deals, I said that in some cases, DCHA, because of our lack of capacity to do a big project or, financial guarantees that we might need for that, we might look for a partner. In this case, we're not looking for a partner. What we're looking to do with this property is take the district funds that we've already received from council, use them to upgrade the building, raise a little bit more money through the conversion process through debt and equity, and then operate the building as an LLC that's completely and solely owned by DCHA. So we're gonna, HUD requires us to create a general partner entity, a legal entity like LeDroit Senior LLP or something like that. That's part of the rules for HUD for conversion through RAD, but we're gonna be the only owner. And so we're not sharing the ownership of the property or sharing the partnership with any private entity. We're gonna own it solely and wholly and outright through our own subsidiary. So I think that's important to note. It's also important to note, you mentioned, the meetings. Every single meeting that we had, we took notes of every question that was asked. We answered a lot of them in the meeting. And then if we, whether we could answer or not, whether we needed time to think about it and respond, we wrote everything down. So part of the process is also that when residents ask a question, we transcribe those questions and we write out our responses, and they get written copies of all of those responses. So there's a folio at the end of this process of printed and online materials, including all the questions were asked and all the responses we gave. And all of that is public information, and it all goes to HUD as a record of what we did. So there is a high degree, I think, of trust and, you know, verification throughout this process. And I think that's important to note.
Alex, if I can just add to that, the DCHA.us page for Kelly Miller and LeDroit does have all the transcripts of those questions that have been answered thus far. So if residents want to take a look, if they go to that and click on the project, they can see the Q&As from those meetings.
Good point.
Commissioners, does anybody have a question for DCHA? I know that there are a couple other properties in our commission that we'll want to go to in the future, like why am I blanking on the one on the hill?
Garfield.
Garfield.
Yes, Garfield Terrace, and I know that the Bruce Monroe and Park Morton, I get that always mixed up, is still it's still being talked about, and we can talk about those at a later time. We'll get to those. I know DCHA has offered to come back at a later date and talk more in general about those, but anything specific to these, speak up, please.
Alex, let me ask you a question about the Kelly Miller walk-up in the 200 block of V Street. They seem to be in the most terrible condition with need of repairs. Could I understand you to say that it's going to be a lot longer for them to be renovated? Could you speak to that a little bit more?
What we'd like to do with those buildings were built in the 1940s during what was, I think, our predecessor organization, the Alley Housing Authority or Alley Housing Administration. So those buildings are really getting to the end of their useful life. And what we'd like to do is redevelop them into a more mixed income community and build more units than are there now. That's our hope, and that's our plan as of now as to what we want to do. In the meantime, we should be held accountable, and you should always hold us accountable for keeping the properties in as good a condition as we can. So that doesn't really absolve us. While we're working through our plan for redevelopment, it doesn't absolve us from the day-to-day operation of the property and keeping it in as good a condition as we can. So I take to note your comments about the 200 block of V Street, and I will work with Jose to circle back and find out what's going on there, and we will, you know, address any issues that we encounter on those.
Alex, can I add to that? Also, just the work that's been happening at LeDroit and at Kelly Miller that we have just finished talking about was as a result of prior year investments from the Rehabilitation and Maintenance Fund. The FY21 budget includes an additional source of funds that we are also going to be deploying to other parts of our portfolio to do exactly what Alex is talking about, which is essentially to create opportunities to consolidate residents on site at their locations and to create build first opportunities where feasible in almost all of the buildings that have been identified for work in the transformation plan. I know that will likely be the case eventually at Kelly Miller walk-ups as well when we get to it.
We have
so that when we get to that point, I saw a question come up about the issue of mitigating displacement, and part of what we're proposing is the use of these funds to bring on make-ready units for residents and to take advantage of some of the vacancies to allow folks to remain on site with Build First. We know how important that is, and I know that Commissioner Hudson mentioned this and some of the other challenges that development of at this scale is not straightforward. It's complex, and there can be litigation. And so the more we can do to allow residents to maintain their presence within the footprint, much in the way that we're talking about here right now with the RADs, that's what we're going to be seeking to do on that. There'll be more information coming out about that in the coming weeks. Today is the first day of the new fiscal year, and we've shared some plans about that, but there'll be additional meetings taking place with each of the properties that will be getting some of that work in the near future as well.
We're happy to answer other questions.
Well,
I just had a quick.
we can connect later for additional questions that I have.
Okay.
And Commissioner Norman, we would be more than happy also to convene a call with you and Ms. Hightower to discuss specific issues at the walk-ups that you referred to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Maybe it's more of a general question about this. You talked about a transition from Section 9 to Section 8, I believe it was, and it seemed like just a really, obviously, I think the thing that we should do. Makes sense to do in this situation. But are there drawbacks? Are there questions? Are there downsides to making such a transition? And are there situations maybe in the city or in our ANC where we'd like not do that?
In general, I mean, any change in operation entails some risk, right? So, and one of the risks I think is that our residents they're very familiar with public housing and everybody knows what that is. The problem is that I think a lot of folks across the district make the mistake of thinking that if there's a program in place, even if it's not working very well, even if it's not providing, decent housing for people, that it's the best we can do and we should keep it, at all costs. And what I want to remind everybody about is that this is not DCHA saying we should do RAD conversions because we want to. This is really HUD saying we are slowly phasing out our commitment to the public housing program. And no one's really said when that's going to end. And, sometimes politics change, but for pretty consistently the last 20 to 30 years, HUD has been making signals about the fact that they are reducing their commitment to public housing. And I think it's important for everyone to realize that, yes, there are risks to RAD. One of the risks to RAD is that as opposed to a declaration of trust from HUD with public housing, which is essentially forever, a HAP contract lasts 20 years, and then you can renew it for another 20. So your affordability might be a 40-year window, depending upon how much commitment there is in the future for HUD to fund that program. But at the same time, if we stick with public housing and HUD decides that you can keep it, but we're just not going to pay for it, we don't have another way to fund it. We don't have a way to subsidize and operate it, and that's the problem. So we're kind of reading the tea leaves and watching the politics, and I think we're trying to be mindful as stewards of the public housing portfolio to make sure that DCHA is sustainable today, tomorrow, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, so that we're not, kind of going down the wrong path. In terms of your question about, do we see a way for some public housing to remain? Absolutely. I think we do. How much of that is still something we're working on. And I think the other risk that a lot of people see with RAD is like if, let's say, for example, instead of operating this building, we were to simply keep a ground lease on the property and give the entire property to a developer, to do the work, and we didn't put some of the restrictions on that we've put on in terms of are operating it just like public housing, then I guess there would be a little more risk to the residents because you'd have a different private entity managing the property then, and it's a little harder to even if you're trying to maintain good controls over your partner manager, it might be a little bit more foreign to the residents. In this case, that's not what we're doing though. We're going to operate with our own forces, so it's really going to look a lot the same. It's just going to be that we're going to have a funding source that puts us in line with the private sector operating operating Section 8. And that source has a strong constituency that will advocate for increases in the program for cost of living and other, adjustments for inflation over time. I hope that somewhat answers your question. I think I rambled there a little bit, but,
Thank you.
Sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Alex and Jose. I really appreciate it. Commissioners, one last chance, and then I'm going to turn it back over to the chair to see if he has any comments and then start the meeting. All right, Chair Turner, it's all you. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We look forward to having you back to talk about the other two properties in the commission at another commission meeting in the months ahead. Hopefully at some point we'll be off of this and can do it in person. But okay. I think what you shared with us was really informative, and I thank you a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hudson, and thank you, DCHA, for participating this evening. It's very public housing and the housing for low and moderate and just developing a better housing portfolio overall is very important to ANC 1B. We look forward to working with you more closely in the future. So thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you very much. You too.
Okay, well, I'll call our formal meeting to order. Mr. Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Commissioner Norman,
Here.
Commissioner Orlowski,
Here.
Commissioner Muhammad, Commissioner Thomas,
Here,
Commissioner Chaya, Commissioner Mader,
Here.
Commissioner Turner,
Present.
Commissioner Delaney, present, Commissioner Hudson,
Present.
Commissioner Winston.
Here.
A quorum of 8 of 10.
Thank you. Commissioners, you have an agenda before you. There are no changes to the agenda. It does consist of a consent agenda. Is there approval for the agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Thank you. Reports and action items for the Advocate and Task Force, Public Health, Commissioner Norman.
Good evening. Last month, we talked about masks and obtaining them for the community. We have received masks. They're in the MOCA's possession. I understand that they are difficult to put on. So we will need instructions on these masks before we can begin to try to hand them out to the public. Meanwhile, we have entered into fall, and last month I talked about the twindemic, and I want to encourage people to think about getting the flu shot, actually get the flu shot. It's free at CVS and I'm sure at other locations. It takes about 2 weeks to build up antibodies. Once you receive the vaccination, it lasts about 6 months. So this is something that is going to help. Obviously, that wearing masks, these things are going to help prevent the transmission of viruses, COVID, wearing these masks. So again, wear the mask, get your flu shot. And also pneumonia comes at this time of the year as well. So get that. 50,000 people a year die from pneumonia and flu. So we don't want to add those numbers to the COVID numbers that are expected to go up to about 400,000 by the end of the year. So I want to encourage everybody to wear your mask properly, not a chin guard, not a face guard, but a mask that covers your mouth and nose. And consider, I don't know if I said last time, but consider some type of eye protection, whether it's goggles, glasses, eye shield, but wear some type of protection. The other thing that I want to talk about today is what we did in LeDroit Park last month. We had a cleanup. Overall, it wasn't bad. It was good from the standpoint that information was passed out to the community. So education was done about things such as cutting grass, cleaning up. And in doing so, I circled back and went back around, and people had actually cut their grass and made the community a little better. I also received calls from constituents about how to call for illegal dumping and that kind of stuff. So we had a cleanup day. So in addition to the grass cutting and calling for bulk trash and illegal dumping and those kind of things, people cleaned up. So it was a good first step for LeDroit Park. So I encourage all the other commissions to do the same thing. So that ends my report for tonight.
Thank you. Short-term family housing, is there an update?
Thanks, Chairman Turner. Progress on the interior of the building continued over the month of September. The permanent water meter was installed by about mid-month on the building itself. The building is also fully up on permanent air conditioning, and they've made a lot of progress in sealing off the third and fourth floor corridors in terms of the roofing and siding for all of the units that's in there as well. Continuing to make progress, and as far as I know, I have not heard otherwise from the Executive Office of the Mayor. They are on schedule for completion by middle of January 2021. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Public Safety and Community Engagement. Commissioner Delaney.
There was no meeting in the month of September. However, I will hand it over to my colleague, Ms. Farnan, who did a walkthrough of ANC 1B12 and 1B04 to speak about that experience.
Thanks, Commissioner Delaney. Yes, so we, thanks to Anthony Moore, he'll give a more robust description of what we did at the walkthrough with Commissioner Norman earlier in September, and then recently in 1B12 with Commissioner Winston and 1B04. So it was great. We had MPD, we had DPW, we had DOH, all parties walking the street and surveying the area specifically that had a dumpster fire earlier in August. So it's great to see short and long-term solutions being discussed. And I also want to acknowledge Commander Emmerman here. So thanks so much for your team being there. And then we'd love to get a crime update from you all over the last month.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. We are continuing to see our downward trend in our crimes. We are at a citywide, third district wide right now at a 29% crime reduction, which is a 34% violent crime reduction. We have still continued to see our gun violence, our gun incidents, our sounds of gunshots. Just in the past week alone, actually, and in 1B, we recovered 3 legal firearms that I can think of off the top of my head. 2 over in the LeDroit area, 1 up on Fairmont Street. And those are just, like I say, within the last week off the top of my head that I can think of. But it's clearly indicative with the calls that we're getting for the sounds of gunshots and the guns that we're recovering is that there are still plenty of them out there. So we're continuing our efforts with that. Our uniformed officers, along with some assistance from our Narcotics and Special Investigations Division, have been out there helping us with that. In addition to the calls for gunshots and the gun violence, we did have a shooting in the 1400 block of Fairmont. I believe it was over the weekend, in which case a juvenile was shot in that case in the leg. He is expected to recover from that, but so far the information and based off the cameras and witnesses, we don't have a whole lot to go with right now. We're still trying to work that case, but of note in that case, and this is what's going to lead me into my next platform here, is there was a vehicle that was in the area of where the shooting took place. It was a stolen vehicle, and that stolen vehicle was a vehicle that had been reported earlier to the MPD as having been stolen with keys in it. That is what the big thing that we're seeing right now in our 3rd district and citywide is a massive uptick in the number of stolen vehicles that we're having with keys in the ignition or vehicles that are running. Fob is in the owner's pocket, but the vehicle is running. And individuals are jumping in these cars and just driving off with them. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is they're being used in other crimes like shootings, robberies, things like that. So we can't stress enough. We've done a lot of PR on it with the radio, with our social media. We've worked with our restaurants and our businesses. Take your keys with you when you get out of the car. Turn your car off. It only takes a couple seconds to turn it back on. It's a lot easier to start your car than it is to go weeks without one. I can certainly tell you that. So it's about I want to say we're at a 42% increase in the 3rd district on stolen autos. And, you know, the vast majority, about 70% of them are key cases. So it's something that's definitely preventable. And we really just want to get that message out.
Commander Emmerman, this is Commissioner Mader. Just a quick question in regards to the shooting you referenced last weekend on 14th and Fairmont.
Yes, sir.
The camera footage, did you get that from the surrounding buildings and was it useful? Or I'm trying to ascertain because we've had conversations with building management on Faircliff as well as across the street to ensure that their cameras are working, and I'm not entirely positive that that's accurate.
I will have to check for you the stats. I do know that on the day of the incident, it was a Saturday, the shooting. Our information that we got was that we had to go back on Monday to get the camera footage from the office. I have not seen it, which means one of two things. Either it is not of quality to really show me, or it is non-existent. But I will get that answer for you tonight, and I'll email you, sir.
Great. Thank you so much, sir.
Amanda, can you tell, same question, you said there was a gun retrieved from Fairmont. What block was that?
That was in the 1300 block, and that was last night. Actually, yeah, that was last night. We got 4 guns in the 3rd district last night, but one of them I think is in 1A in the 1300 block of Columbia. But the other 3 were in 1B, and it was I believe it was a vehicle stopped in reference to a traffic violation where the occupant had a gun. But the traffic stop was in that block, and I believe that individual was frequenting that block.
Thanks.
Thank you. And a question from the community, Ms. Judy Floyd, asking for an update on the August homicide outside 1315 Clifton. Has there been any updates?
So that case is still an active, open investigation. We believe at this point the motive of that case appears to be a robbery. We are still we have a video that we've pushed out to our social media platform of a vehicle of interest, along with some an individual who got out of that vehicle who is on that image. Unfortunately was wearing a mask, so it does make it a little difficult. But our detectives are working some very good leads in that one. I think we've gone pretty good with it. My hope is that we will bring that case to closure. I think there's a few things that they need to tighten up, a few things that they need to continue to get some evidence on, but I'm hopeful that they can close that one.
Commander Emmerman, I just wanted to thank you for your thorough response to my question last month about the shooting on Harvard Street. I assume there have been no additional pieces of evidence recovered or leads acquired, but appreciate you following up on that.
No problem. And you are correct. So far, it's still an open case with nothing additional at this point.
Great. Any other listeners have questions at this time?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
I can try to unmute you, Commissioner Thomas. Any questions for you,
Did you have a
Commissioner Thomas?
question?
Okay. Yeah. I did see the notice about the walkthrough, especially in 1B04, which I was able to join everyone on that particular walkthrough. I understand that everybody ended up going through V Street, 1400 block of V Street. And as you may know, Commander, there's been several shootings that occurred on that particular block. One young lady being struck by a stray bullet. I've taken an initiative because I know most of the folks that stands out on the block. I think I spoke about it a while back with Mr. Moore in terms of putting out signage. But however, I've taken it upon myself on Friday and Saturday nights to do a brief walkthrough block at least twice around the block, myself and a couple of the parents that lives on that particular block. So hopefully, by our presence being known and knowing some of the folks, that young people that be out hanging out on the weekends, that they'll know that they are being, and hopefully a lot of the illegal activity would slow down, if not stop. So I just wanted to throw that out there so the folks know that we are out and trying to make sure our young people are safe and making sure that they're not a part of the problem. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Commissioner. I know we've had some challenges in that block, especially with the recent shootings. And I would open it up and tell you if you want and if you guys are comfortable with it, let us know and we'll see if we can get an officer or somebody to walk with you too. I know sometimes that's a delicate issue, but you might be able to connect with some of the guys and gals out there without the police there or with us. But you let us know and we'll see what we can do about getting out there with you.
Okay, great. I actually met with Officer Martin. I think
Okay.
he's one of the, he's out there late night. So we met and we talked a couple of times. So
Excellent.
that's been helpful.
He's one of our newer, younger
both of
officers, so I
us.
think he's very
Thanks
easy
for
to be out there.
Okay. Great.
Commander Emmerman, thank you for joining us this evening.
My pleasure, Commissioner.
Great.
We'll now move
And
to
just a,
zoning,
sorry, just
preservation and development, and Chairman Nelson.
I believe Amanda wanted to say something before you cut her off, so I will give her this opportunity.
No, that's okay. I was just going to preview to the next month. We're going to have a voter education kind of campaign, so just be on the lookout for that. We will announce in the newsletter. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, Amanda.
Patrick?
Wrong button,
I
sorry.
think Patrick, there you go. We can hear you now. Thank you so much.
Tonight we have 3 items that need to be voted on for action that the committee has reviewed. The first item is a project located at 1214 Fairmont Street Northwest. It's in an RF1 zone. It's in SMD 1B03, which is Cedric Mohammed's. And they're going in front of DCHA. They're asking for a special exception under the residential conversion requirements to construct a 3rd story and a 3-story rear addition and convert the existing building into a 3-unit apartment house. This project was one that we had actually reviewed the month before and had some tweaks that we wanted them to attend to and then return to us, which they did, and actually took all of our recommendations and implemented them. So I gave them kudos for that, because that's the first project that we've had at our committee where a developer has actually listened to every single thing that we've said and applied it. So the committee is recommending that the ANC support the application for the special exception under the residential conversion requirements, construct a 3rd story and a 3-story rear addition, and convert the existing property into a 3-unit apartment.
Commissioners, are there questions?
Patrick, were you able to get in touch with Commissioner Mohammed on this or any of the other cases in front of us this month?
No, he seems to be incognito. I have tried, but I have not been able to reach him.
I know you have. Thank you. Nothing for me.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had one question. Patrick, was there any community involvement, any support or from neighbors, or any potential effects on neighbors that they may have mentioned?
Actually, Dan, that is one of the pushback items that I pushed them on because they didn't have any input at all. And we unanimously said you need to go back and talk to people and get some input. So there was input from the both abutting neighbors as much as they could get. Both of them are in support of it, and no issues relating to not being, no issues as far as of structures or all of the things that normally come up were not brought up. And actually, one of our committee members lives across the street from this property, and she actually went and talked with a couple of the neighbors herself to get their input. So we did get input from them.
And there were no objections, right? I think I heard you say that. Just wanted to be clear. Okay, thank you.
If there's no further discussion at this point, I'd make a motion that we approve or rather that we recommend approval of the support the application for 1214 Fairmont Street Northwest.
I second.
Motion as Commissioner and Chair of the committee, since the Commissioner is in
As Commissioner Mohammed is not here.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Abstention. Motion passes to approve or to support. Next item.
Patrick, we might take these two and as a pair, if I'm remembering correctly. These are the two that are.
Well, we can. They're two separate cases, so they'll be
We should
filed
talk about them as one
separately,
pair.
but we can put them together since they're actually carbon copies of one another. These are a project located at 782 Fairmont Street Northwest and 921 Euclid Street Northwest, and in an RF1 zone. And they're going in front of BZA for the exact same thing, so I'll only read it one time. These are actually alley lot parcels that are located at the bottom of the alley where it comes out towards Sherman. So this is for special exceptions under the alley lot provisions from the penthouse setback requirements and a variance for alley lot height to construct a new detached single premise at these locations.
Are these a block apart, Patrick?
They're actually down at the bottom of the alley behind my house, adjacent to one another. One's on one side of the alley and the other's on the other side of the alley.
But it's on the same block of, say, Sherman.
So it's, the address is one on Fairmont and one on Euclid.
Okay, thank
But
you.
they abut one another. They look at each other side to side.
Thank you. Questions for Patrick?
Same question for me before about.
So, yeah, so there was input. The owner actually came to this meeting and he addressed that he had reached out to as many of the abutting neighbors as he could find. He put flyers in or letters acknowledging it. I did receive today from Rob, and actually Amanda forwarded me some too, from the lady that is the alley lot adjacent to her on the alley that's on Fairmont Street, up some issues relating to her house and where it sits. Her house is literally on the alleyway. And at that point, the alley is a 10-foot alley versus the alley in the middle between the streets is a 15-foot alley. And her house is literally built right to the alley. So as long as I've lived in my house, which is in excess of 25 years, that house has always been hit by cars and trucks and vehicles pulling in and out of the alley because they just try to come in too fast or don't understand how much depth they have. So he said that he had addressed her concerns, and her concerns basically are what's going to happen during construction and the trucks that could come through. And as I said, I received some forwarded stuff from Rob about her going on and on about the city having to do. That's not our issue. She needs to address that with the city if she thinks that the city trucks are damaging her building. And as far as his attention to that, he did say he would address that with her and be conscious of what's going on. And it's just part of construction in the city. I mean, when they use the alleyways and the way the houses are built. It's the same on the other side of the alley coming out, and it's the same on the alley going at the other end where you come out onto Georgia Avenue. They're all 10-foot alleys, and literally one car can fit through. And if the truck is too wide and doesn't turn right, it hits the building. So the answer to your question is yes, he did reach out and did get some positive feedback from everyone, including this woman who's not against the project. She's just concerned about what's going to happen during construction.
Okay, thank you.
And these are not alley properties. These front to a existing street.
No, they're alley lots.
Will they need an alley address?
They already have an alley. It's a separate. It's already assigned an address.
Okay.
These lots have been on record for many, 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 many years.
Okay.
The lot that is the corner lot on the corner of Fairmont and Sherman where the liquor store is,
Right.
that property is the, shall I say, father to these two properties. They're all owned by the same person, and they were sold at the same time to him when he bought it. He had to buy these two lots, and he's had them for in excess of 45 years.
Okay. Any further questions? Commissioner Winston?
I would, let me pull up the address here. Following the committee's recommendations, move that the ANC support the special exception under the alley lot use provisions, so on, for 782 Fairmont Street Northwest. And also the same for 921 Euclid Street Northwest. I don't know if we need to record two separate votes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay?
Aye.
Abstention? We will support these two applications. Economic Development, Commissioner Hudson.
There's one more thing quickly,
Oh,
Jamie.
sure.
Jumping the gun on these. The next meeting is going to be October 19th of 2020. And I will make a public announcement to the committee since they'll probably get feedback from others, specifically to Miss Anita Norman, who I will talk to later in detail. The project that was reviewed and put through at 421 T Street, that went for HPRB review and is scheduled to go to the BZA, has run into some serious problems and will be attending the ANC for further input and voting on. This project has been, for lack of better words, the bane of my existence as well as Anita's for way too long. But it's still out there running, and it's going to come back for a second hit.
Well, let's hold a lot of action until you get the notice.
Yes. I'm not going to do anything until I get the notice.
Okay. Commissioner Hudson.
So the Economic Development Committee did not meet this month. We don't have a planned meeting for next month. The public life study closed yesterday. So the packet actually was right up until yesterday, because it says it's open, it's live now. So the public life study is closed. They're tabulating the information, and we'll get that information back. Other than that, I don't have any news to talk about. We can turn to the main streets.
I think, Chica, I see you still on. I can unmute you here.
Hello?
There we go. I can hear you. Perfect.
Oh, it's my turn? Sorry. Hi, everyone. How are you? Thank you so much, commissioners, for maintaining this slot for me to be able to do a little update on our Main Street program thing, and for all of the hard work you guys do every month, committing yourself to our community. Sorry, I just had it up. So I'm really excited. Our first update is that we just closed out our second round of small business grants. They were awarded to 6 small businesses, to Ben's Chili Bowl, Edge's Barber Shop, Ben's Chili Bowl, Edge's, Exiles Bar, the, oh, I'm blanking on the last ones. Edge's Barbershop, CrossFit DC, Archipelago, and it'll come back to me in a second. The only challenges we're really dealing with right now are that our main street, we've lost two long-standing popular businesses on our corridor, Twins Jazz and Marvin, and our businesses are really experiencing the harsh realities of COVID. Originally, we weren't seeing too many closures, but it seems like now we're starting to see business owners decide that it is too difficult to stay open, while on the opposite end of the spectrum, we've seen a few new businesses open, such as the new fruit bowl place that's next to Ben's Next Door. It's downstairs, Barcata Wine Bar, and Rebel Taco. And so I think we're seeing some interesting trends, but we are really concerned about being able to continuing to be able to support businesses for the long term. So we are we're continually raising funds so that we can continue to provide small business grants, which are being used for to pay back rent, to pay for maintenance that they otherwise would have paid for out of their general revenue, and new signage. And a lot of the small business grant money has gone to personal protective equipment, PPE. So for all of the businesses who applied and did not win the grants, we awarded them, we sent them offerings of PPE. So some have responded, some haven't, but we do have a stock of PPE for small business owners if you do know of any who are in need. It's not, an unlimited supply, but we do have a limited stock and we do want to get them out there. And lastly, just that we're wrapping up our fiscal year 20 this week. So we're rolling out and preparing our plan for fiscal year 21, which I'm very excited about. So I'll have some updates for you guys next month around how we're going to continue to build on this inaugural year of our Main Street program and be able to support more businesses. And I'd really like to thank our volunteers who put their time into reviewing these grants and helping us get these dollars into the hands of business owners who really need them at this time. I would love to answer any questions that you all might have. And I'd love if there were any input or things that you'd like to see in the upcoming year. Commissioner Norman, I did include rat abatement focus into our work plan for fiscal year 21 with you in mind. So just in case that was going to be a point, I do have that. Actually, I have one last thing. I had a few businesses reach out to me around the concern of the issue of people experiencing homelessness, and they've asked about resources and ways that I'd be able to be supportive. And I connected them to the Office of Behavioral Services. And so from that conversation, we realized that there was this opportunity to connect business owners who'd been, historically working in their own silos. So the idea of establishing a U Street Main Street Business Council came about. And so we're inviting all business owners within the U Street corridor, which unfortunately is only between 17th Street and 12th Street on U Street, and then between Florida Avenue and T Street on 14th Street. But we're inviting business owners to join so that they can be able to just unify in advocacy and in efforts such as rat abatement and, being able to get additional grants and subsidies and to better be able to advocate around some of the issues that they're dealing with right now.
Thank you for that update, Shika. Let's now turn to the Transportation Committee. Commissioner Mader.
Thanks, Chairman Turner. The Transportation Committee did not meet last month, and as of now, we are not scheduled to meet this month unless there are applications through TOPS that come in for review, in which case please continue to check the ANC 1B website for updates If we do have a meeting this month, it'll be posted there. Thanks.
Thank you. ABR, Commissioner Orlowski.
Yeah, we also did not have a meeting this month. We did not have a meeting the previous month either. I do plan on having a meeting this month, which would occur on the October 21st at 7 p.m. So at this point, I don't have much to share, but we have gotten a few things come up that, you know, not terribly major, but there's some other issues I'd like to discuss. For instance, kind of dovetailing on what Shika mentioned earlier, that there are several business closures in 1B and some temporary closures, and possibly considering ways that we might be able to help, because that is a very large source of employment around here. And since we will be having some pretty extensive shutdowns, that's something I think that is worth spending a little bit of time discussing and see if there's anything that we can do.
Thank you. Administrative, we have 3 items. One is the Howard University steam plant notice. As you remember, we did some approvals on it. And now it appears that they're going to need to go to the to zoning or BZA, I forget which, for a approval to not not have to meet the water retention runoff requirement for a legacy building. The thought was that it was going to get approved through a different way, through just a exception for legacy properties. Should that be denied, Howard had asked for our support for the exception, which I think is appropriate. Are there any questions? There's a letter to that effect in the packet. If there are no questions, I would move to support the request. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Abstention? Support is approved. Thank you. There's a 1-page code of conduct summary in the packet. It's time for us to do a review of our bylaws, our standard operating procedures, and I thought it important that we reaffirm our code of conduct. This is pulled from this brief summary sheet is pulled from our bylaws, our SOPs, the BEGA training and regulation, as well as the OANC regulations. What I would like to do is ask the commission to approve the summary document and direct the executive committee to review, reconcile, and update the bylaws and standard operating procedures before the end of the year. I know it sounds really exciting.
Move that we approve the Code of Conduct Principles and refer to the agency bylaws and SOPs, DC government ethics guidelines, employer guidelines, and other relevant sources that may govern individual actions of the commissioner, and that the executive committee reviews and updates any code of conduct before the end.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Abstention? Passes. I'm going to ask the vice chairman to take the lead in the update process.
I really thought about voting this down, James.
Well, even if it passed, you would still end up with it. The third item is a letter requesting proactive action by DPW on illegal dumping, particularly in alleys where it has become a incredibly serious problem and has just greatly increased to the rat population and our ability to do proper abatement. Instead of putting trash out at the appropriate times in receptacles, people are just throwing them into vacant alleys or just at the end of an alley or just dumping stuff on the sidewalk. And it's gotten out of hand, I believe, in 1B. I know it's gotten out of hand in ISMD. And I believe it's, I think we've all had some experience with this. There's a specific example that's particularly alarming that I'd like Commissioner Winston to talk about in his SMD.
Yeah, thank you, James. Over the past couple of months, there have been 2 literal dumpster fires in the alley just off of U Street, between U and V Street, you know, where Busboys and Poets, kind of a confluence of many important neighborhood activities, residents, revelers, everyone going, you know, in and around this area. And literally, the dumpster is catching on fire. Potentially it's arson. We're not sure. Either way, it's an alley that needs attention, and both to enhance cleanliness and also to prevent what I think is an extraordinarily dangerous occurrence from happening again. This is because of this and other incidents in alleys around the ANC, we want to have the ANC send a letter calling for proactive enforcement and creative measures to really go above and beyond the typical exhortations of businesses to enforce this, but really figure out how we can do things differently, because we can't have dumpster fires literally endangering thousands of residents and businesses.
What are the causes?
We don't know. There's a lot of trash in the alley, and it seems as though the MPD is investigating for the presence of accelerants, which might indicate that there's actually been, fires set with gasoline or something like that. Potentially someone just put out a cigarette, or conceivably, it's something electronic. It's hard to say. But speaking with the DPW inspectors early this week, what's clear is that the surplus of trash, because of some dumpsters that have unknown ownership, is just contributing to an environment where it feels like it's okay to dump illegally. And the residents reported seeing people coming and bringing old couches and mattresses and things like that. And in Chairman Turner's SMD as well, there have been reports of this kind of activity. And again, the presence of a dumpster fire, I think, just puts an exclamation point on why this is so dangerous. It's not merely quality of life and public health, but is potentially a very acute risk to people's safety.
Is that a motion to send a letter?
So I move to send a letter conveying all these facts.
Second.
Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Thomas, you may be trying to say something. I think you've gone on to mute, though.
Yes. Commissioner Thomas, I've unmuted you here.
Okay.
There we go.
Can you? All right. The alley that you're speaking of, I know at several meetings I spoke about the same particular alley with all the trash or what have you. Even with that side of the alley, as well as the opposite side next to the little pizza place along 14th, it seems like some of those businesses that has not been open for a while, once the businesses that are open, their dumpsters are full, then they proceed to fill up the other dumpster, which allows for trash to spill over. I walked that area quite a bit and has also taken pictures. I think at some point, because some of the businesses have closed down, you mentioned Marvin's is closed down. There's a couple other businesses that are still open, like the, the sandwich shop that's on the corner. Then there's a business in the basement from that shop. If we could just get the businesses that are open, if they can take responsibility for making sure that their trash receptacles are being dumped on a regular basis, empty. Then if it doesn't look like it's a whole lot of trash in the alley, then more people more likely not to dump there for fear of whoever is emptying theirs and keeping the alley clean that they may be seeing. What we've done here in the back of where I'm at it, between B and W, we make sure that residents get, if they see someone illegally dumping, to get their tag numbers and call in the 311 number, and they will be ticketed for illegal dumping. That helps a lot. But yeah, at some point, I think the businesses on both sides of the block, between 13th and 14th on U, needs to, and Beach Street as well, keep their dumpsters emptied on a regular basis. And for any businesses that are closed, maybe if those dumpsters could be removed.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I'm saying? So you got dumpsters, especially that particular alley that we're talking about, it's horrible. And seems like there's some discrepancy as to whose dumpsters they belong to. So if the businesses are, then for me, there should be no dumpsters behind their business. So people won't be dumping trash in them. And for those that do have dumpsters, to keep them empty on a regular basis. And not only just dumping and getting them emptied, but in some cases, they're not even sweeping businesses or cleaning up around the area that their business is in. And I think that should be a part of them being able to do business as well. That's just, my take on it. I know years ago.
Yeah.
Commissioner, we'll include.
I'm sorry, because I know years ago.
Commissioner, we'll include those comments and stuff in the letter to DPW. We're asking them to be more proactive, and we'll be working through Mr. Moore from the Mokers to maybe some alleys will get cameras set up for proactive finding. So we'll take them systematically through. We obviously can't attack them all this way at the same time, but I know that that's been a problem alley as well. So we'll include that.
Okay, thank you.
Let's vote on the letter. Did we vote on the letter?
Not on the text of the letter, but on the motion to send a letter to this effect.
Yes, we did. Okay, good.
That was the motion. We didn't vote on it. But I would make a motion.
All those in favor, aye. This is to send a letter.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Thank you. We'll now go to announcements. Mr. Moore, Office of the Mayor.
Good evening, Commissioner. Sorry I'm not visible. I'm preparing my little basement apartment for this rain with a couple of sandbags and moving my furniture around just in case I get some excess of extra rain in my apartment. I'd like to thank the commissioners, Amanda and Commissioner Dan, for setting up the walk. Well, partner with the Mokers office to set up the walk this week, which I think was very informative for the neighbors, MPD, and DPW to get firsthand information from busboy and poets, especially their managers were on site for the walk and kind of explained how DPW kind of fined them because of the excess of illegal dumping in that particular area. The two dumpsters that's basically abandoned used to be, I think, Republic Gardens probably years ago. Those dumpsters have been charged to the point where we can't make out who the owners were or the distributors for those dumpsters were. So DPW is investigating that, and they're trying to set up some type of operation to get those dumpsters removed, but they have to try to find out who the ownership and who was responsible for those dumpsters. I also made contact after the walk with the Ellington business manager, Miss Shay Morales. She's open to letting the DPW investigators access to their video footage to catch illegal dumpers going forward. So I think that's a good thing to move forward to try to capture some license plates numbers or video footage of individuals who are illegal dumping behind the busboy and poets and the rest of the establishments on 14th and U Street Northwest. Also, we have the leaf season announcement is November the 9th. Please set your leaf collection bags in the tree box, or in on the curb on Sundays of the week scheduled for leaf collection. To go over a couple of things from the walk in LeDroit Park with Commissioner Norman and DPW and DOH and DCRA. We noticed 3 abandoned homes that our liaison right now is trying to find ownership and send out fines for overgrowth. And one had access, a door that had access to individuals who were setting up encampments in the backyard off of U Street. Inez is taking a close look into those situations, and she should get back to me as soon as possible, hopefully next week. Also, Commissioner Norman, I sent you the instructions for the mask, and I will try to get in touch with you tomorrow to drop the additional mask off to you for your constituents in your SMD. So if you could take a look in your email and check out, it's a 16-step mass assemble instructions. So it's kind of difficult. And so if you have any extra masks, I sent you the instructions to have for your printer to get to work for the hundreds of masks that I'm going to give you tomorrow. Also, we made headlines with the guys on 14th and Clifton Street. I talked to the owners with the business manager at Deron Paint, and he has a very good relationship with the gentleman that sit directly in front of the establishment. It probably sounds weird, but for me to make headway with those gentlemen, I think I needed to try to find a creative way to make engagement. So I spoke to him, and he explained to me one night that he left the garage open with all the supplies there for anyone to take in, and the guys protected the establishment for any burglaries. So I'm going to try to make him my pinpoint guy to try to, I don't want to say infiltrate, but make some type of engagement with it, if it's a head guy or a leader, to make some engagement with them to try to decrease the loitering on the corner of 14th and Clifton Street. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Anthony, I think the last time you and I spoke, we spoke about the corner at 14th and B.
Yes.
About the non-usage of masks. And we talked about putting some signage out, I guess in the tree box or somewhat we spoke about. Are you still able to do that?
In contact with DOH. I don't know if they had any type. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. DOH didn't have anything that was. DOH didn't have any literature that was weather resistant for me to put on the tree box. So I was going to try to get in contact with the Reed Center to try to put it in those windows where those guys kind of congregate on that corner. But they didn't have anything for me to leave in the tree box or to post on a pole that was weather resistant for that type of literature for the mask, the use of mask in public.
Okay, I think that'll be a great help if they can put them in something in the window just to remind them. And in terms of masks, are there opportunity for me to get some additional masks to hand out as well?
Yes, I can get you some additional masks. Like I explained before, The masks are kind of difficult to put together. There are 16 steps. It's not the traditional mask where you just put behind your ears and you just move and go. It's kind of, so I have some instructions along with the mask, and I can make arrangements to drop them off to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Office of Council Member, Oscar.
Good evening, everybody. Have a couple of updates and announcements. Schools. Several DCPS schools are now open for Student Support Center and Career and Technical Education programming. These student centers have specialized programming for small groups to supplement distance learning. In Ward 1, Bancroft Elementary School and Cardozo Education Campus will be opening. We expect to have an update on when in-person learning may resume from the mayor in the next week or so. On September 23rd, I joined, Councilmember Nadeau joined 3 of her colleagues in sending a letter to the mayor asking her to share specific details on how they are preparing to safely reopen schools. Reopening schools will take the coordination of several agencies, and council member knows that parents and school staff need transparency to feel comfortable. Department of Park and Recreation, registration is open for fall programming on October 13th. Banneker Recreation Center and Columbia Heights Community Center will open. The Marie Reed Aquatic Center will also open on the 13th. Also, organized athletic activities will require a permit, and applications for permits can be accessed at dpr.dc.gov. Leaf collection. Leaf collection will begin on November 9th. This year, the agency is trying to limit the exposure and spread of the virus, so residents will be required to bag their leaves. DPW will distribute 20 paper bags to each household. Bag distribution will begin on October 30th. And there's an update on grant program. The Office of Nightlife and Culture's Streetery Winter Ready Grant Program will provide recipients a one-time $6,000 grant to assist with winterizing outdoor dining spaces. Flu season, we are approaching flu season, so don't forget to get your flu shot. Registering to vote, register before October 13th to receive a mail-in ballot. Register in person at any of the 95 vote centers during early voting, October 27th through November 2nd, or election day, November 3rd. A list of documents you will need can be found, and I can share that link with you all. If you already registered, double check your registration to make sure the Board of Elections sends your mail-in ballot to your current address. Some residents have already received their ballots, but the Board of Elections is sending mail-in ballots in batches. So don't worry if you haven't received yours yet. Once you do receive your ballot and fill it out, you can cast your votes a few different ways. You can return your ballot by mail. Ballots must be postmarked on or before election day. Return your ballot in one of the 55 new secure drop boxes across the district by 8 p.m. on election day. Drop boxes will become available on October 5th. You may also drop your ballot off at a vote center during early voting week or election day. If you decide to vote in person, we highly recommend you to vote during the early voting week, which is October 27th through November 2nd, so that we can avoid long lines on election day. You can vote at any of the 32 vote centers that will be open. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Oscar. Any questions?
No community questions at this time. All set.
Do we have anyone from the Office of the U.S. Attorney? Okay. Commissioners, announcements? Okay. We'll now open the floor for community announcements.
great. We have Mr. Joe Leonard here. Joe, I am going to promote you and then you'll come on screen and we would love to hear your updates. I see you here. There we go.
Thank you very much. I just have two quick updates. As Oscar said, as the city begins to slowly reopen, we're noticing a lot more people on campus. And I was wondering kind of why, because I know the ANC 1B has been pretty consistent in sending out on your listserv to protect private property of Howard University. But one thing that I did see was the wraparound was kind of constructed wrong. The wraparound says once COVID ends, it's almost like you can access Howard's campus. So if you don't mind, can you take the wraparound from the statement and just leave the Howard statement? It would be great if you all could assist us in this.
Hey, Dr. Leonard, this is Commissioner Delaney. I think we've been making an effort to include places in this announcement as well, which was probably the reason for the wrapper. I think we've had a couple of conversations now about not wanting to be explicit about Howard, obviously emphasizing that Howard is a place where the community needs to respect, but also including parishes and other private property that that shouldn't be violated during this time. Maybe you and I should connect offline about the right way to message.
Yeah, but the main point is it's not during this time and other times as well. I think that's important to be able to say to the public, and I look forward to the conversation. But we need your support on just kind of respecting Howard's private property as any other area in the city. So I look forward to the conversation.
Does Dr. Leonard, one question? Does the university have any plans to put up signs around the campus?
We don't. This is the reason. No other university outside of Gallaudet has signs, and we don't want to gate the community. The community's been open 150 years, and so it's important that we don't gate ourselves in to lock other people out. We would think that adults would be able to address, address Howard in the proper fashion as it addresses the other universities in the city.
Okay, and you had a second item?
No, that was kind of a combination of both. It's because the city's reopening. And as it's reopened, people are revisiting the campus.
Okay. Thank you.
I would, if there is a second item, I would say thank you for the support on the STEAM operations and the water. That is absolutely vital. So thank you very much for that support.
Welcome. Other community comments?
Great, and I believe we do have someone from the U.S. Attorney's Office here. Anita, oh, here we go. I think I see you on screen now, Anita. Oh, I think her microphone is just connecting. So while she reconnects, we have Nick Deldone here that we will allow for a few updates. Nick, you are coming on screen now. Okay. Nick, if you'd like to unmute, we'd love to hear your updates. There we go.
Thank you very much. ANC 1B, thank you. My name is Nick Deladon, and I represent DuPont East Civic Action Association, whose boundaries extend into your ANC, particularly in East Meridian Park and the Reeves Center, that area. I want to report that we concluded our candidates forum for the at-large seat on the DC Council on September 17. It was a great success. We're glad to report the House was full. And with that, in that regard, I want to say two things. We asked questions that related somewhat to our community. And you may know that the protected bike lane on 15th Street goes directly through our boundaries. And we are concerned. We discovered that although the protected bike lane protects cyclists from automobiles, it causes a hazard to pedestrians. And this is news to the city, and we want to bring attention to the fact that we may need regulations and enforcement to protect the pedestrians. And we are not, let me say that DECA is not against bikes or cyclists. Many of us are cyclists. But this is, in any case, what I want to report is that there was a unanimous comment from the candidates that they agree that the cyclists are bold and reckless and that there is a need for regulation and enforcement. And this comes as a surprise to some of us because we get a lot of flack when we say that we want to protect the pedestrians and control the bikes. But in case they're on our side, and that was interesting to report. It's a bit of news. So one of them reported that his wife was hit by a bike. And so they all had stories to tell about how something is needed in this area. The second thing I want to say is that, you know, our flagship campaign is to stop the development at the Masonic Temple. And once again, with regard to this, each one of the candidates said that they favor an increase of green space in our community, a protection of green space. And of course, this is, we are there ahead of them, and we were very pleased to hear this unanimity. If the development does not go forward, we would appreciate being able to have a public view of the back end of the temple and to have a park there and so on. And so we will please the overall success of our first candidates forum in this election season. And those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for sharing. And then we have Kelly from the community. I will promote you here, Kelly, and you will come on screen.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, Kelly. Yes, thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kelly Cervic. I am a Ward 1 resident and a board chair at Wangari Gardens. We're a community garden at Park Place between Kenyon and Irving Street with more than 100 private plots, and many of them are provided for free to low-income neighbors, including in Ward 1B. And we have a large public garden and orchard that's free for all to harvest from. I've been a plot holder there for about 5 years, and it's a real gem in this community.
Great.
All right. So I'm here because this is an exciting time for the garden. We're working with landscape architects on a long-term vision, potentially adding features like walking paths and more trees, more seating. And we would like input from everyone in the community about your vision for the space. So I'm hoping that people can take a few minutes and on one of the plans under consideration. I don't know if it's possible to paste, let me paste the link into the chat here for the link to the survey. And finally, I just want to mention sort of the most critical challenge for the garden, which is our water source. Unlike most community gardens, we do not have our own tap. We depend on a permit from DC Water to draw from a fire hydrant across the street, and the city has made this permit increasingly expensive and is talking about phasing out garden water permits. And if that happens, the garden will dry up and die. So we need to get a tap installed to keep us alive in the future. And so we're asking for your support in making that happen. So if you'd like to get involved, or if you have any ideas about how we can secure a water source, please get in touch with us at Wangari Gardens, WANGARI, gardens@gmail.com. And I'll also put that in the chat. thank you so much for the chance to speak.
Hey, Kelly, thanks so much for speaking. Will you shoot me an email, 1b10@anc.dc.gov?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. And I'll make sure to include that in our newsletter as well. So anyone watching who can't access the chat right now, you can, we'll post it on the site too. Great. And then I think, Anita, your microphone might be working now. If you can give us a quick test.
I think so. Hi, it's Anita LaRue.
Yeah.
I'm the Assistant U.S. Attorney, the 3rd District Community Prosecutor. I don't have a lot to update, but you know, as many of you know, we haven't been doing much in the courts. It looks like the grand juries are gonna start up this month. Trials look like they're gonna be starting up in January. So that's kind of where we are. However, there are a lot of hearings still going on, virtual hearings. More and more courtrooms have opened up to conduct virtual hearings. This may go on. They've now realized that we can have some kind of, virtual hearings. People have asked for this. So of course, in particular, NPD is interested in seeing if we could do this after we get back to kind of the new normal. So we'll see. But that's just the update as far as what's going on with the courts. And if you have any questions for me, I missed earlier. I was at another meeting. If you have any questions for me, by all means, please ask.
Hi, thanks for joining us, Anita. Can you describe, with grand juries coming back on, what are the specific precautions that will be taken? I served on a grand jury in the building, which was very tight, very small, with 16 of us in there for a month.
Exactly.
How is that going to be mitigated?
Do you remember the moot courtroom?
Yeah, the big room, the one that we weren't in. Yeah, at the end.
There's five grand juries, and then there's the big moot courtroom. So when you return, a lot of times you go into the moot courtroom. So that's going to be the one grand jury. They're going to be only having one grand jury run. For right now, that's going to be the grand jury, and so the distancing is going to be done right there. So right now, what we're doing is just bringing back the grand juries that were in effect back in March when everyone shut down. And so essentially each day there'll be some type of schedule. So each day will be just one grand jury coming in for the very reason that you just mentioned. That's where we are right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's a massive room. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, that means there'll be less of a chance of getting called then.
Well, for right now. I'm sure they'll change that.
Are they not doing any of them online? Have they tried it?
Well, remember, there's a secrecy issue. So when you start talking about things online and evidence going online, the idea of that being secure is that's another situation,
Right. All right. Thank you. Thank you for attending tonight.
Oh, not a problem.
Amanda, are there any other comments? Or any other community members?
Nope, nobody else. And if anything else comes up, just place it in the Q&A and we'll make sure to get answers post-meeting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. With that, we are adjourned. See you in November. Remember to vote.
Bye, everybody.
See you in November. Good night, everyone.